budget for a typical tilapia fish farm in Jamaica. Hi everybody, welcome again to another episode of Fish Keeping Jamaica. Welcome to this channel. Okay, so bear in mind that this budget, this estimate, this pre-calculation is based on assumption, based on discussion, based on a little bit of research, and based of practicality that exists in Jamaica. All right, so we're talking about how much it would actually cost to actually construct or institute or whatever you call it, financially viable fish farm locally in Jamaica. All right. So the last time I shared with you, an average of 30 acres would be able to suffice marginable, practically marginable, profitable tilapia fish farm business, right? And for reason more than one, you would want like probably a couple 100 by 35 feet ponds, which is the smaller ones, right? You need a couple of those, and you need a nursery. You need processing individuals, laborers, quarters, and you need some other stuff on the property. Now today we're talking about the costings, right? Okay, so you're going to be looking at the whole idea of the availability of water, right? So in typical Clarendon, where I'm at, right, it's a little bit dry. So you have to depend on the irrigation authority of Jamaica for water. So you're going to be paying uh, less rate than the water commission, but the dependability on the water is based on several factors, right? You might end up with drought. You might end up in a drought, um, you know, period. You might end up in a period where there is excessive flooding in a particular area. You might end up with persons actually trying to illegally divert the water into spaces to do their own personal things, right? So there's a lot of liability there, right? The best bet is to actually get a piece of property that is really near a river, a stream, or in a space where you have steady water supply, like a well, right? So back to the side where I would say back to near to St. Catherine would be good. Too much into Clarendon, going back to Manchester, uh, that would be a little problem because you're gonna have issues with one. Uh, you're gonna have issues with the height and the temperature, and if you are into breeding and being self-sustainable, you're gonna find yourself in a little bit of expense because tilapia love warm water and it also likes sunshine, right? Especially for breeding, right? And this trait have its drawbacks, as whenever tilapia is exposed to warm temperature and a lot of sunlight, they breed a lot, so therefore they are underweight. And this brings to another thing where we talk about the whole idea of which direction you're going, whether or not you're going to be self-sustainable, or you're going to actually sustain just only sustain the adult fish and actually source the smaller fish somewhere else. All right, so to source the fish somewhere else, it's going to cost you a pretty box. Yeah, a pretty amount of dollars, right? So to start off, you need probably about probably $30 million Jamaican, right? So you're gonna be leasing property. You're gonna be leasing land, and probably you would want to lease land for at least a minimum for 10 years, right? And for 10 years leasing land, you probably might pay roughly about nearly $1 million for that period of time, or probably it depends on how the land is situated. As I said before, if it's near a river, it's gonna cost a little bit more. if it was once agricultural land, it's going to cost a little bit more. But if it's dry and like out there not doing anything, a lot of stone and all that, there you're going to get it cheap. But it makes no sense, because here now you're going to have to actually get clay so as to make those ponds. And clay is not cheap, right? And to get so much clay to make so much ponds, it's going to be excessively expensive. So another thing that you would actually look at is the availability of large land space with clay deposits, so as to have clay ponds, so as to cut back on the immediate cost of building ponds, because clay ponds are cheaper to build. Yes, you need the tractor to actually do the excavating, and that's going to cost a pretty penny, right? A couple millions. I estimate it probably about 3-4 million. It depends on how many ponds you're digging at once. And if I were in the position where I am building, let's say, building out a tilapia farm, I would not go ahead and uh, cut and develop the entire 30 acres one time, right? I will do it in stages. So as I need, I would expand, right? Because I first have to see the feasibility as to whether or not, this thing will work, right? And as I grow, I extend, and that will be a little bit more easier, right, than the tedious task of actually um, creating 25, 30 ponds on a 30-acre property, and have to be maintaining all 31 time. That's a little bit tedious, right? So you're talking about leasing the land, right? So you're gonna have to have land that is relatively flat. It has high deposit of clay. It's near a water source. It is also in a position where you can actually source electricity power. Some parts of Jamaica are void from this what do you call it, amenity, right? Yeah, you have some parts of Jamaica that you don't have light, and that's kind of well, persons would say light, electricity, power, right? And some person would say that those places seems as if it's the medieval time, but no, it's not. It's just how it is in Jamaica, right? It takes a while to develop, right? And flying over certain sections of Jamaica, um, sometimes I can see vast areas that are unoccupied, uninhabited, but at the same time, the accessibility to these places is really out of this world. I mean, when they were building the highway, they had to actually cut a path through the mountain, because um, not not doing that mean that they would have to actually remove some persons from their house and go around along the roadside, and that would be expensive on the government part. Where would they put these people? All right, so it's a little bit expensive, right, to start, but you can start very small. And so you're gonna need land deposit with clay. You're gonna also need a water source. You're gonna also need, to start with, I would actually import my own seed, my seed stock, my seed brood stock. Yeah, my seed selection, I would actually import those, so as to ensure that the quality uh tilapia end product uh is, it can be compared with uh, anyone, against any scrutiny sorry about that, that exists throughout the scope of tilapia fish farming in Jamaica. All right, so this is a podcast, right? This is a podcast. You're not actually seeing the imagery, right? But you can actually picture it. All right, picture this: you have a flat piece of land, and that is rare, right? Because all flat lands right now are being used in Jamaica to make houses, right? There's this thing that they say that you must plant what you eat what you grow. But to actually get to that, I think certain spaces within Jamaican environment should be um, designated for agriculture. Presently, right now, a lot of agricultural lands are being developed into commercial hubs, um, you know, apartment complexes, car park. We all know that sugar is dead in Jamaica and the wider Caribbean. When I say sugar is dead, I mean there's not much monies that can be gained on sugar when it comes down to the exporting. Um, Based on the World Trade Organization ruling, where in which the whole idea of preferential treatment by Europeans to Caribbean um, countries that were once colonies of European countries, they usually get preferential treatment because they had them underneath nearly 400 years of slavery, right? So they after slavery ended, they still imported, well, the Caribbean region still exported um, sugar to these countries, right? And although the cost of production actually um, being mechanic as a result of engineering skills, mechanicize or whatever you call it, I can't pronounce the word right. And this is one of the reasons why I tend to use conversion of word to audio, right? Mechanical, right? It's not like that in Jamaica per se. In that you would employ like 400 persons, 400 men to actually cut probably about 500 or 600 acres of sugar cane, right? Those men and women would actually get some amount of monies, for example, in the summer to send their kids to school. So they look forward to that. In some countries like in Brazil and in Mexico and in some other countries, right? South American countries, Central American countries, right? What you find is that they are able to cut the cost of production, right? Thus, the amount of persons that the sugar production producing countries actually, the costing is actually slashed. So what they are actually selling their sugar for is far less than what Jamaicans would actually sell their sugar for to Europe, right? So as a result of that, you find that Jamaican sugar is not really being being sold much to European market because World Trade Organization said that, listen, that is preferential treatment and on it the fair trade. You're supposed to buy from the person who seemingly have the best price, not because of your obligation, but because of costing. So, as a result of that, Jamaica have actually, well, Jamaica and some of the Caribbean countries have actually lost their footing in European sugar export market because we have been, when I say we, I mean Jamaica in particular, have been using traditional means of sugarcane production for the last 200 years, 200, 300 years, right? Not changing much, right? Old machinery, old techniques, the introduction of new techniques and new machinery would mean that a lot of persons would lose their job. And because of politics, of course, and because of economics, a lot of persons don't want it, so they just stick to the normal routine, right? Okay, all right. So we come off of that. How did I end here? How did I start? Well, in here, right, right. All right. So we talk about land, right, and we talk about the whole idea. The flatlands are now being redistributed to housing and other, construction of other things, right? And that this is like not looking that good as far as future food production in Jamaica. All right. So to get lands that are more you know, pleasing or acceptable for fish farming, you will have to go further into the rural spaces. Probably sections of St. Mary, Hanover, Westmoreland. You want even St. Thomas. You want spaces where you have good amount of rainfall, you have good sunshine, and the temperature is between roughly 30 to 34 degrees Celsius on average. Manchester and the border of Clarendon is a little bit iffy because the temperature at times kind of it's not that good. So therefore, your yield at certain time of the year will actually fluctuate as far as production, weight. Because you go by weight, not necessarily by numbers, by weight, right? So you have to look at that. All right, and then now you in calculating the the costings, you would have to look at your labor force, right? How many persons would you need to actually work? Would I have 100 persons? Would I have 10 persons? No, for me, if I'm just starting, I would just start with probably about 235 by 100 feet pond, right? And I will probably have about 10 spaces for fries. Probably 10 totes, 10 250 gallon, 350 gallon totes, right? And that's how I would start, right? And looking at that space, and that's roughly about probably about $4 or $5 million there, right? And then I would gravitate gradually move, and I wouldn't need more than probably about 10, if the most, individuals to actually work within that space. As I said before, we go by weight. You don't go by numbers. So in ensuring that the weight of the stock maximizes the profit, you now have to ensure that you get quality feed. That means that you could not buy feed from Hyper or Nutrimix, because these companies do not provide high quality tilapia feed for tilapia fish within Jamaica. You'll have to import, and importation of these feed is going to be costly, right? However, the yield and the quality of the yield is going to be superb, so therefore the customers will not complain, right? And dividing the stock into frozen meat and live fresh cut, and that would even create a more uptake in choices, as individuals actually choose which of the two they prefer, right? And actually solidifying a market. You have to, on that small space that you have, you would have to have a marketing department that actually drives home the point that, listen, getting fish stock from this farm actually works. It profitable in the sense that it's reasonable, and it cuts a lot of cost. When you talk about the economics of trade, you talk about quality, you talk about quantity, and you also talk about competition, right? So therefore, you're gonna have to beat out the competition. And how you gonna beat out the competition? You get quality feed, you get quality seed stock, and also you have a rotatory system where in which the fish is actually what I call it now, is monitored carefully and precisely, so that any abnormalities can be easily cited and remedies taken, so as to nullify all of that, right? All right, so I am kind of going a little long here, right, on this podcast, but we're talking about the whole idea of how much it would cost. So my estimation, start a tilapia farm in Jamaica. Talking about land, talking about labor, talking about seed selection, of broodstock, talking about the whole idea of feed, talking about mechanism that's needed, things that you use on feed the fish, the nets, the security, the pump. I will use paddle wheels, um, electricity, securing water sources and all that. I would say that for probably about a year, you probably might end up spend roughly 20 million, right, in this time of age, right? You might spend 20 million. However, you might get back probably about 20, 21, 22 million. So the whole amount of spending will not yield much within the first couple of years, because what you find is that when you just start off a business, right, usually the business will take a period of time to actually grow, right? And in growing, you can actually set the pace as to your intended achievements. So therefore, as you gain a profit, you're gonna end up gonna be reinvesting your profit back into the business, so as to strengthen the weak areas. So in the long run, all these weak areas will be strengthened, and the profitability would be solid and consistent, and everybody will feel comfortable, right? And as I talk about the whole idea of how much it would cost, you alone can't do everything. So you're going to need accountant, you're going to need plumbers, you're going to need electrician, you're going to need labor force, you're going to need those persons who actually yeah, security. I talk about security already. There is a lot of a lot of a lot of there's a lot of expense that is within it, right? So the $20 million is practically to I would say, based on discussion with individuals within the business, the $20 million probably could maintain and keep a fish farm of probably about 10-15 acres for a year, right? So you would have to turn around that amount of spending, that amount of land space, real estate, into profitability, and thus um, fostering uh, you know real returns. I don't know what you're feeling regarding this year. Yeah, there's no solid costing, but these are just some of the variables that you have to consider. And we're talking about Jamaican context. We're not talking about North America or Indonesia or Philippines or Africa. We're talking about Jamaica, right? Jamaica, um, as the world turns and the world spins, um, things are going up as the US dollar go up, everything else go up. So it's rough, but at the same time, monies can be made if sensible investments are made within this space. Thank you very much for listening. This is just my little ramble for today. Bye bye, guys. Catch you next time. Peace out.